There comes a moment in everyone's life when the mirror stops being just a reflection. It transforms into a question, a kind of gentle nudge, urging you to confront who you are versus who you secretly know you could be. Isn't that wild? Sometimes this realization hits after a heartbreak. You know, when you feel like your heart's been shattered into a million pieces, and you're left staring at yourself wondering how you got here. Other times, it sneaks up on you after a failure, a loss, or just a stretch of days that feel like you're stuck on repeat. You look in the mirror, and suddenly, something's shifted. Not in a dramatic way, but in a deep, resonating way that makes you feel like you're ready for change. It's not that you hate your life, it's more like you sense that it no longer fits you. Like an old pair of jeans that used to be your favorite, but now feels a bit too tight, you know. That discomfort you feel in those moments, that subtle ache, isn't the enemy of growth. It's growth in disguise, quietly whispering that it's time to evolve. We often picture transformation as this grand lightning strike moment, something that happens suddenly and dramatically. But in reality, it's more like a slow, invisible process. It starts not with the world around you, but within the architecture of your own mind. Psychologists have a fancy term for it: identity reconstruction. It's all about slowly dismantling those old beliefs, habits, and stories that once kept you safe, but now feel like chains holding you back. Before anything changes in your life, your mind has to undergo a quiet rebellion. Every transformation kicks off with a little tension, that friction between who you've been and who you're meant to be. And here's the kicker: most people mistake that tension for failure. They say things like, "I feel lost," or "I don't know who I am anymore." But from a psychological standpoint, that confusion is sacred. It's your ego losing its grip, making space for something new to emerge. Carl Jung, a big name in psychology, described this as the death of the persona. It's that painful moment when the mask you've worn to survive the expectations of others starts to crumble. It feels like losing yourself, but really, it's the opposite. It's the moment you stop living as a character in someone else's story and start living as your true self. Neuroscientists have a cool term for this process: neuroplasticity. It's the brain's incredible ability to rewire itself through experience. Every thought, every new behavior, sends out signals that carve fresh pathways through your mind. That's why awareness is so powerful. The moment you start observing your own patterns, the procrastination, the self-doubt, the fear, you begin to loosen their grip on you. Because let's face it, the brain can't change what it doesn't notice. So, transformation starts with noticing. Not fixing, not forcing, just seeing. Seeing the ways you shrink when you should speak up. Seeing the moments you say yes when your whole being wants to scream no. That's awareness, and awareness is the beginning of freedom. But here's the paradox: the more you try to change, the louder your resistance becomes. That's not a sign of weakness. It's just biology. Your mind is wired for psychological homeostasis, which is a fancy way of saying it likes to keep things stable. When you try to act in ways that contradict who you believe you are, your brain sends out alarm signals. It floods you with doubt, fatigue, and distraction. Not because it wants to punish you, but because it's trying to protect its idea of you. That's why habits are so tough to change. You're not battling laziness. You're fighting the gravitational pull of your old identity. Real transformation, then, isn't about forcing new habits. It's about creating a new self-concept. Because here's the deal: behavior follows belief. You can't sustain a new pattern if you're still clinging to an outdated identity. So, how does identity change? Not through catchy slogans or surface-level affirmations, but through repeated experience. When you consistently show up differently, even in small ways, your brain starts to adjust. You begin to trust yourself more. You start to see evidence that you can choose differently. It's in those tiny moments, choosing patience over anger, honesty over avoidance, effort over apathy, that the old identity begins to dissolve. Each new choice becomes a vote for who you're becoming. Transformation isn't just one big leap. It's 1,000 quiet steps you take when no one's watching. But let's be real, growth isn't always graceful. It often feels chaotic. You might find yourself crying for no reason, feeling empty for weeks, or questioning everything you once believed. That's not regression. That's emotional detox. It's your nervous system processing the parts of yourself you've been avoiding. Psychologists call this integration, bringing the unconscious into the light. It means finally feeling what you've been dodging. It means forgiving that version of yourself that had to survive by pretending. Because transformation isn't about replacing the old self. It's about embracing it with compassion so it no longer needs to run the show. Change doesn't happen in a vacuum. Your environment, the people, spaces, and habits you surround yourself with, reinforces your sense of self every single day. If you're trying to grow but stay immersed in environments that echo your old identity, your brain gets mixed signals. It clings to what's familiar. That's why transformation often requires pruning, letting go of old spaces, conversations, and even relationships that no longer reflect your future self. Not out of arrogance, but out of alignment. You can plant a new self in the soil of your old life and expect it to flourish. There comes a point in every transformation where the past version of you feels unreal, but the new one hasn't yet stabilized. Psychologists call this the liminal phase, that in-between space. It's the most disorienting stage because nothing feels certain. But if you can stay present in that uncertainty, if you can resist the urge to rush back to comfort, you'll find that the chaos is actually creation. Your mind is reorganizing itself around a new identity. You're not falling apart. You're reassembling in a truer form. And one day, without any fanfare, you'll notice something subtle. You no longer react the way you used to. You no longer chase what once mattered. The noise that used to consume you becomes distant. You start to feel spacious, grounded, free. That's not a final destination. It's integration when your mind, body, and identity finally start moving in harmony. Psychologically, this is known as coherence, when the emotional and rational parts of your brain stop fighting and start communicating. Your inner world becomes calm, not because life got easier, but because you got clearer. Most people think transformation means becoming someone new. But in reality, it's about remembering who you were before the world told you who to be. It's peeling back layers of fear, shame, and conditioning until what's left is something quietly powerful. Awareness. Awareness changes everything. It turns reaction into reflection, pain into meaning, and confusion into clarity. Transformation isn't about fixing yourself. It's about meeting yourself fully, honestly, compassionately. It's not about becoming extraordinary. It's about becoming real. And when you finally arrive at that place of inner truth, you realize something profound. You were never broken, only unfinished. So embrace the journey. It's messy, it's complicated, and it's absolutely worth it. You're on your way to becoming the most authentic version of yourself, and that's something to celebrate.